Hello, everybody. Shavua Tov. Welcome to Saturday Night with I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. We are going to be talking to my mentor, my incredible, esteemed leader, the person who really helped me so much in the nonprofit space and gave me so much advice and has mentored thousands, hundreds, thousands of others. She is absolutely incredible, inspiring people I have ever met, frankly. And I can't wait to bring her story here to you tonight. And here she is. That was actually quite good timing, I have to say. You did that well. Hi, Cindy. How are you?
I'm good.
Do me a favor, adjust the camera a little bit down so I can see. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Perfect.
You have to coach on this.
No. We're all good. Okay. So let's just jump right into it because there's so much to talk about. First of all, just give people a little bit of an intro as to who you are, your background, and then I guess the leading up to what led you to this decision to want to adopt?
So I grew up in California, moved to New York for churro, went to Cornell for grad school, started off a career in labor relations. It evolved. I'm now and then I fell into politics, and I worked in politics for 25 years, starting off raising the money and then managing campaigns in New York, across the country, so on and so forth. Did some arbitration and also worked with nonprofits. And if you hear crying in the background, that's my cat. That's my cat.
I was going to say, I'm like, I know there are no infants in your house at the moment, so I know it has to be one. Yeah, it has to be a cat. Go ahead.
So what do I do now? I'm the founding director of the Chesed Leadership Program, which is a fellowship for women in the Orthodox community who run nonprofits. I went back to my alma mater, and I am now the director of institutional advancement at the Lander College for Women. And just a little bit in my spare time, I do consulting for for-profits and nonprofit entities, usually involving government relations, government contracts, and funding. So.
Yes, I would say spare time. Like there are times that Cindy is like adding to our WhatsApp group at, 2 o'clock in the morning, spare time, in her spare time.
And in the beginning, I would say, isn't it time for us to go to sleep? But yeah.
In absolute insanity. Absolutely.
I'm parenting an 18-year-old.
Right. Who never sleeps. So,
right.
Okay. So let's go back. You were working your way up in the political ladder, running these campaigns, fundraising in these high power situations. And so what led to this decision that you wanted to adopt?
I was in my 40s, my early 40s, and 9/11 happened. I had an office across the street at 120 Broadway on the 32nd floor overlooking. I was not there that morning because I had gotten in late the night before because of turbulence flying back from California. And the whole time I thought, I'm fine because the pilot's in control of the plane. That was my mantra about flying. That was how I opened the fear of flying. So 9/11 hit, I spent months afterwards in that office in 120 Broadway overlooking the World Trade Center. And I think like a lot of other people, I just spent some time evaluating where I wanted to go in life. I was not married, and I had a very strong desire to have children. It was something I felt really strongly about. I saw how much it meant to me to mentor young people, to teach. I really wanted a child.
And then what?
I decided I wanted to become a mother. That was it. And I looked into the different options. I was in my 40s. Pregnancy would be a project, not guaranteed.
Right.
Spoke to doctors. I spoke to a rabbi about how this would work, and was told it's halakhically permissible. And of course, you all have to consult your local Orthodox rabbi on that, but I was told it was okay. But I didn't think probability-wise that it was necessarily the best option for me. I had friends who had adopted specifically from China.
Meaning, hold on, I'm just going to go back for a second. Meaning that you spoke to your doctor about the thought about adoption or about getting pregnant on your own using a sperm donor?
I spoke to my doctor about getting pregnant on my own.
Okay.
You know, the for that, how long it could take, the probability of it working, and all. And I also really thought for myself, is it, and this is such a personal thing, and I'm not judging anyone, but I thought, is it important for my child to be from my egg, or for me to carry the child? And how will I feel? And what will the impact be on the child in the Orthodox Haredi community? How will that all work? And I decided ultimately to go the adoption route. I had friends who had adopted and were incredibly happy. And I decided to take that route. And I also found the benefits to the child of adoption, and the benefits, you know, whether you want to say in the whole world, I found those benefits very compelling.
Meaning what? Meaning that I want to like sort of tease out a couple of things. Was it that you felt that a child who was adopted would be more accepted in the Haredi community versus a child that came from a sperm donor? Was that part of the decision tree?
Yes, but that was partial. That was pretty much on the side. The other thing was the fact that there are so many orphans who need a home. That was very compelling. And, you know, we're going to talk about my decision to adopt from China.
Right. One
of the things that was so compelling to me about China is that they were literally throwing away their daughters.
Right. Okay. So adoption was, for, you know, any number of reasons, the path that you chose to pursue.
Right.
And so how did you go about this?
So I started doing my research. I'm very OCD about research and figuring out everything. And, you know, it's just my whole approach. I had these friends. I had done a campaign, a Senate campaign, and then a House campaign in Idaho, believe it or not. And my friend in Idaho adopted from China.
Okay.
And they really liked their agency. Now, I was doing this as a single woman. I had to do this all myself, which is like the life of a single woman, right? I was a little concerned about New York adoption agencies because it was a tough time after 9/11 emotionally. Like one time I just ran away and went to Utah and stayed there for a week just to get away. I wasn't sure if I could handle the New York style of agencies and bureaucracy and all that. I needed something a little kinder and gentler. And my friends were very happy, and no aspersions on New Yorkers writ large. It was just where I was at that time. Yeah. My friends were very happy with their Boise adoption agency, which really specialized in China, and I decided to use them.
Amazing. And so what was the process like? And I guess also, were you told at any point that it was going to be more difficult for you as a single mother adopting? And were there certain countries that were more, when you were doing your research, that were more amenable to individuals who are single to go through this or not? Like what was that process like?
Countries will not let single parents adopt for different reasons. At that time, China was allowing it. So I was fortunate. I have another friend, another single woman who adopted from Vietnam. I don't know what the status of these countries are at this point.
Right.
But it's very, very political, extremely political. And it saddens me when I see governments, ours and others, get into spats that then affect the adoption process. But at that point, it was before the Olympics in China, it was pretty open. And they were trying to come across as being very open.
Okay. And can we go back for a second and just talk about when you and I first discussed your adoption with Rachel, and when you posted that original post, when we talked about that in September of 2019, one of the things you wrote about was the fact that your mother was not, like, took a long time to get on board with this. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You know, there's two things. I think that all parents, or Orthodox Jewish parents, whatever, Jewish parents, all parents, they have this vision of walking their daughter down an aisle, right? And that's a very hard thing for them to give up on. And I think even though I was in my 40s, to them, it was like I was saying, okay, I don't need to get married. And I say having a baby. I still refer to it as having a baby, even though I adopted.
But you know what? There's so many people. I mean, I've had many conversations, more this week, obviously, than I've had, previously in my entire life, frankly. But I've had so many conversations with different individuals this week. And so many adoptive parents say that to me. They say, these are my children. They're mine. My baby, my children, period.
Okay, so let me fast forward about my parents. When I first told them in a phone conversation, there was total silence. Total silence. And then my father said something like, oh, well, we wish you luck. And I told them that I was going to adopt from China. And my mother said, don't you want a white baby? I said, no, it's really not an issue for me. Okay. End of the conversation. My mother took to her bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because it was such a shock. It wasn't what they anticipated. It's not what families anticipate. My aunt, her sister, called her and told her basically snap out of it. And let me just say that this whole thing about breaking the news to people, when I was in graduate school for labor relations, we learned this concept of attitudinal structuring. Attitudinal structuring, where when you want to get both sides to a specific point in a labor negotiation, you have to structure their attitudes along the way to bring them along. So I decided that I was going to wage a campaign, starting with my family, so that they would be my advocates in the community. I started breaking, first of all, to my brother and sister-in-law, who I'm extremely close with and who were 100% supportive. But then I come from a fairly prominent and large family here in Brooklyn, here in New York, and I started breaking the news to them. And I would say, I'm adopting a baby from China. And then I would say, isn't that wonderful? The whole thing, smile at a baby, the baby, you're doing smiling back at me, right? So that's how you evoke emotions from an audience. So I was doing that with my friends and family because I wanted them to share in this with me. People were amazing. And long story short, my parents were so on board. When I went to China, I took my mother.
Wow.
My father made
I have goosebumps.
Right?
Yeah.
My father made all the travel arrangements. He couldn't go with us, but he made all the travel arrangements. He found the deal on Northwest Airlines because they have adoption specials. He picked us up at the airport. My mother will tell you that Rachel looks like her.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And the part, like the whole question of nature versus nurture, it's crazy how Rachel has taken on family characteristics, habits, all that.
Wow.
And certainly
wow.
Mom. So.
Wow. Certainly yours. Okay. All right. Let's now go back because I want to get to that too, but let's now go back. So you announced to your parents, they don't know what to do with it. They eventually get on board, but what was that process from the time that you decided that you were going to adopt from China till the point that you got on that plane? What was that process like? How long did it take, etc.?
I signed up with an agency in Idaho, in Boise, Idaho, which is unfortunately no longer in business. I signed up with the Jewish Child Care Association here in New York because you have to do a home study to see if you're fit to be able to be an adoptive parent. And that was very scary for me because I knew they would be coming into my home and judging my home and judging me. And I heard horror stories, but I had friends who had already done the process and they literally coached me and held my hand. I went to one friend's office and she showed me all of her paperwork from her adoption and what you have to do. You have to build a dossier, you have to get all this paperwork, and she shared that with me. The Jewish Child Care Association is a wonderful organization. And here's something interesting. If you are fortunate enough to get pregnant, you just get pregnant and have a baby.
Right. If
you take a long time to get pregnant, you eventually get pregnant and have a baby. If you're going to adopt, you have to take parenting classes before.
Right. It's wild.
So I took the parenting class through Jewish Child Care Association of New York. And the person giving the class was Jane Aronson, who is, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Explain why I'm opening my mouth. Go ahead.
I should explain why you're opening your mouth?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Keep going.
He's a pediatrician. And at first I thought, Jane and I aren't similar. We're just not on the same wavelength. But I was taking these parenting classes with her, and I decided we were going to use her as our international adoptive pediatrician, because it's a specialty. And if I tell you that I love Jane Aronson, truly, truly, I went on the board of her nonprofit for years. I love Jane Aronson. I continue to call her. After I adopted Rachel, if something happened, like when Rachel got bitten by a mosquito and her face blew up and her finger blew up, I would call Jane and say something like, Jane, I'm really alarmed. And she would say, Cindy, what is it that's alarming you? Just like talk me down, first time mother. It's okay if your kid goes up. It's okay if your kid falls on her forehead while learning how to walk. I could not have done this without Jane. Jewish Child Care Association, the woman who did my home study, Elise Felix Hahn, who now AA, is wonderful. And we've remained friends ever since. And then the adoption agency, Boise, and my friends were wonderful.
Amazing. Someone's asking a question about whether you still need to do these parenting classes if you already have children and then you decide to adopt. Do you know what the rules are?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure you do need to take a class, but I'm not sure. It's really common sense, and I would say do it, and I'll tell you why. There are certain problems that are going to come up, and you can almost predict. One of them is reactive attachment disorder, and which means reactive attachment disorder. When a child is taken from his or her mother at a young age, there are going to be consequences. It's almost like a rewiring of the brain. And it's a condition, it's a syndrome, it's a whatever. So there's no mystery. Why would you want to learn about this on your own when you could have taken a class that teaches you what to expect? So, or even like, what's rickets? Because they don't give milk in the Chinese orphanages. No milk, none. So Rachel had rickets when I adopted her. It means she had limbs, low muscle tone, and all that. I'll tell you something funny. We were in China, and not a lot of kosher food. But what they do have is Haagen-Dazs. So my mother would look for the Haagen-Dazs, and we would go to the Haagen-Dazs, and she would get ice cream, and she would feed it to Rachel. We had no idea whether she had lactose intolerance, but she was eating Haagen-Dazs at 1 year old and did fine with it.
Wow.
She ate Haagen-Dazs. The parenting class teaches you what to bring when you're going to another country. And there's similar parenting classes for when you're adopting domestically, because there are issues that you need to know about in advance, or when problems arise, especially an attachment disorder, which is pretty predictable. You can say, aha, this is the problem. I need to deal with this, and I can deal with it.
Right.
So I learned about that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what was that time frame from the time you signed up with the adoption agency, you did the home study, you had all these pieces, you were registered in China. Then what happened? How did that, what was the timing like?
So there's a lot of procedure and paperwork here. You have to get notarized, and there's some other word for it. Like all of my paperwork had to be signed, notarized, and then affirmed by whether it was the Secretary of State or the county clerk or whatever. That was a lot of work. There were 2 points where I thought this is not going to happen. The first point was when I went to INS, which is the old name for Homeland Security,
yep.
Get Rachel's paperwork done so that she can become a naturalized citizen in China. I thought this is not going to happen. But I've been working in politics for all those years. I never needed a favor from anybody. What do I need to get a stop sign fixed? Nothing.
Right.
I called up my friends in Hillary Clinton's office and I said, I need help. And they helped me. They made that happen. One Police Plaza was a nightmare then. They had crucial information in yellow ink on white paper. And when I was And I said, you never told me this about something that was expiring. This woman said, yes, it's on that sign over there. And I went over, I said, where? And then I see a sign, yellow ink on white paper. And I just kept thinking, I'm in one police plaza. Everyone here has guns. I have to behave. And so then I called a contact in the police department to help me. And sometimes you have to do that.
Look, you know what? We always say, right, in so many areas of our lives, like you can't necessarily see God's hand, but sometimes you do, and you had been in certain situations and placed in different job opportunities, and who knows,
right.
Like maybe it was because of this reason.
Right. And by the way, I made up a sign for them, that same wording in black ink on white paper. And the next time I went in there, I brought it to them so that no one else. Yeah.
Okay, so that bureaucracy, this bureaucracy.
How long did it take?
Yeah.
18 months.
Wow.
Which is, by the way, the gestation period of a giraffe.
Okay. I don't think I'm ever going to forget that now.
Giraffes stand there and just drop the baby when they give birth. And I imagine myself as a giraffe walking around during this whole process, because that, again, gestation period of a giraffe. And can you imagine?
And so you had in this whole process, but you had already picked Rachel and knew that, like, so when did you hear about Rachel?
So there is an agency in China, and I imagine like this little lady sitting there with a stack of files on parents and a stack of file on babies. So, and they make matches. I don't know how, but really in God's hands, truly in God's hands. So my agency was wonderful, the Boise agency. You get what's called a referral, and that's how it happens, and that's the match. So the agency in China made a referral, and the agency in Boise rejected it on my behalf. They did it because they knew all the orphanages in China, and they felt that that particular orphanage was not good.
Okay.
And so they rejected it on my behalf, and I had to trust them. Then next referral came through, and I got this paperwork saying, you have been matched with this baby, Yang Hongjin, that was her Chinese name, in an orphanage in Yangshu, which is near Nanjing. Oh, so the agency kept saying to me in advance, kept saying, what do you want in a baby? And I kept saying, healthy baby. No, what do you want? Healthy baby. What do you want? I said, I'm not going to ask for anything. No, you got to tell us. I said, okay. I don't want a baby from a city because of lead.
Interesting.
The air was so bad in China then. It was like constantly brown. It was really horrible. And there was a lot of lead poisoning in the city. So I said, okay, a rural adoption agency. What else? I said, where's Yao Ming from? Because we're all really tall. My family's really tall. So where's Yao Ming from? Is it true that like the babies from the north, the people from the north are taller? Like, I know that sounds superficial, but they wanted me to say something, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't remember where Yao Ming is from, but the agency, the orphanage that Rachel is from is in central China, healthy area, and she's not tall.
Amazing.
My nieces and nephews nicknamed her Yao Minga, like putting like the Spanish thing, putting an A at the end.
Yeah.
But they nicknamed her Yao Minga until they met her.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have Rachel as your Yao Minga as your referral, and then go ahead.
You take the referral to your international adoptive pediatric specialist.
Okay.
Look at it, to look at things like head circumference or other, is this baby looking healthy? So I brought Darrison, and
so you had her medical records basically.
Yes, they send you pictures, and they send you, some medical records. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I'm guessing Jane said, this looks good.
Yep.
And so then you went back to the agency, you said, yes, we're good. And until how long until you got on the plane?
I think it was between May and July.
Okay. So pretty quick from that standpoint.
Yeah.
And so talk to us about that moment when you first saw her, and then what the process was like there, how much time you had to spend there with your mother, and then bringing her home.
So we flew into Beijing. We spent Shabbos in Beijing. And then on Sunday, we got one of those little planes and flew to Nanjing. And then on Monday, we went to this government office, and we're sitting there, and a car comes, and a man and a woman come out, and the woman's holding a baby, and she just handed her to me.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was unbelievable. It's like, here's your baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's it? Like, here, and like, have a nice life?
You sign a lot of papers.
Right.
You're in a government office. You sign a lot of papers. They make the adoption official. They start the process of the paperwork there. And then we had a guide from the agency who was like driving us and also translating, because we don't speak Chinese. We went back to the hotel, and Rachel was on the bed, and he stripped her down and showed me the Mongolian birthmark on her back, which is very normal. But we Americans would look at it and say, what happened? Was she beaten or something? No, she had what's called Mongolian birthmark. People from certain countries, certain complexions have that. And I was like, wait.
I'm going to explain as the pediatrician in the room. So the Mongolian birthmark is it looks like a bruise, actually. And it's right at the base of your spine, sort of right above where, you know, your butt cheeks are, for lack of a better word, just for everyone. And it is an absolutely, completely normal birthmark for exactly what Cindy said, for people of certain complexions, for people from certain racial profiles. The child was not injured during the birth process or afterwards. It is endemic, for really, for lack of a better word, in those specific individuals.
Right.
So, yeah.
So he shows me that. And then I was like, wait, what do I feed her? What does she eat? And he said, go get rice formula, soy formula.
So hold on. I'm sorry. Like, when you left America, like, part of these parenting classes and part of the, like, wasn't like, oh, you need to pack up, you know, these clothes and this many diapers and take this formula and blah, blah, blah. Like, it wasn't any of that. It was there and they'll like,
no, it's like, you come with, Dr. Aronson tells you like what vaccines to get. So both my mother and I, what medicines to take with you.
Right.
So I had said to her at one point, should I take a car seat? And she said, why? I said, what do you mean, why? For safety. She said, they don't have seatbelts there.
Oh, I didn't realize that either.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I don't know if things have changed, but they didn't have seatbelts there. And then we were at the hotel in Nanjing a day ahead, and they put a playpen crib, like a pack and play, in my room with flat sheets. And I said, oh, I have to have fitted sheets. It's not safe to have flat sheets. So I went with my guide to a department store, and there were no fitted sheets. None.
Wow.
Used fitted sheets. And they used soft mattresses and soft bumpers in their crib. Oh my God. So unsafe, but somehow they survive. Not that I'm advocating doing that.
Right. Or some of them do and some of them don't. Right.
Yeah, maybe now. So I had brought medicine anticipating whatever.
Right.
But when push comes to shove, like, what does she eat?
Right.
And she only had 4 teeth. She was
How old was she? How old was she when you adopted her?
Adopted her on her first birthday.
Oh, wow.
On her first birthday. So some people, when they adopt, they celebrate a gotcha day, the day that you adopt.
Yes, I've heard that. Yes.
Birthday.
Amazing.
She had
amazing. Okay, so let's like shift, and I want to talk about, you know, as she's, you know, you get her, you bring her back. I mean, we could spend a lot of time on her younger years, but what I really want to talk about, because I'm hearing a lot of questions from people in our community, they're asking about how it is to bring up a child from another race, from another culture. How do you feel about it? How does Rachel feel about it? And I know we've cleared all of this with Rachel beforehand and make sure that she's comfortable with you discussing this. Have you noticed differences in terms of, you know, being in the Haredi community when you're in when you're at events in the Haredi community versus events in other parts of the Jewish community? So talk to us a little bit about that piece of it.
Say one more thing about the adoption process. Before I went to China, I called my insurance company and said, I'm going to China. I'm going to be adopting a baby on this day. I needed her added to my insurance policy as of this day, as if I had given birth while in China. And they said, no. What do you mean? They said that they wouldn't cover her until I brought her back into her county of residence. I said, but what if something happens in China? I need insurance. They said no. And they basically threatened me, like, stop bothering them. I was working for Elliot Spitzer at that point. He was the Attorney General of New York. There is a healthcare bureau. When he heard this, he had this thing where he would like lock his jaw and his jaw would bulge. He was so mad. He called out, get me Joe Baker, who was the head of the healthcare bureau. They went after Oxford.
Wow.
They went after Oxford and forced a settlement that adopted children are treated the same way as birthed children, no matter where. They forced Oxford to pay a huge settlement fee to cover the cost, to do sensitivity training for their employees, and to make whole any parent who had spent money in another country because they didn't have the coverage. I went to a list of clinics and with cash and credit cards. So I just want to, and when I eventually saw the settlement, it was on a Saturday night, and I read the settlement on the Attorney General's page, and I was sobbing. And I called Elliot, and I said, Elliot, did you know about this? He said, I negotiated it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's definitely different. I'm an anomaly anyway in the community because I've never been married, and I'm prominent and involved in the Aguda. You know, I'm involved with the lady organization. Again, I had prepared people somewhat. We went to a bar mitzvah the weekend that we came back. My cousin made a bar mitzvah. This little boy came over to us and he said, your child looks Chinese when she's sleeping. I said, because she is Chinese. So that's
when she's awake?
That's one of the really nice stories. But when I tried getting her into a play group, you know, just from a conversation, she was accepted. And I said, oh, by the way, my daughter's Chinese. And the woman said, oh, wait, I have to check our wait list because maybe there's someone ahead of you. I told some of the rabbis I was close with, they flipped out and they found another play group for me. I knew I'm the type of person who tackles things head on. So when I enrolled her in school, I had a binder that I gave to every teacher. And I would give them a binder, and I would give a copy of the Bamboo Cradle and another book.
Which is, talk about the Bamboo Cradle.
It was a story about a rabbi and his wife, and they found a baby in a train station and adopted her and went back. They lived in Israel, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. And that daughter is now a mother, a wife and mother with children of her own. And I believe she's a teacher in Beis Yaakov's in Baltimore. So people understood the Bamboo Cradle, and I gave them background about fitting in, about bullying, that sort of thing. I would give every year. I would give every teacher a binder. And
I'm just thinking, like, what an incredible, like, you had to be her advocate because you knew you didn't want to wait for things to happen. You wanted to approach it head on. I mean, and I'm thinking very much as a parent myself, and, you know, one of my children has a lot of food allergies and they're life-threatening. And when she was younger, before she could advocate for herself and say, no, I can't eat this and no, I can't eat that, I would sit with the teachers before she entered those classrooms with exactly the same kind of information.
Right. And I must say also that the Rabbanim, the rabbis who I'm close with, were incredibly helpful. And the Rav of my shul just set a tone, a welcoming tone. And then a cousin of mine helped me find the right base bin to go to for the conversion. And I went as far right as possible so that everyone would accept it. There would be no question.
So just explain for people who don't know what you're talking about. Just explain that.
So I converted Rachel to Judaism. I brought her back in July. In August, we went to a religious court, I guess you could call it. And there are certain blessings, certain witnessing. She had to be dunked in a mikveh, which is a ritual bath, in front of these rabbis. I called a cousin and I said, David, are you home this week? He said, yes. I said, do you have a bathing suit? He's beginning to wonder. He said, yes. I said, take Rachel into the mikveh, which is an incredible thing, because how many people get to say that blessing on converting a child?
And you couldn't go in with her? He had to, or
not in front of nope, not in front
of.
Oh,
right, because of men, right? Okay, sorry. I'm like, right. I'm just processing as we're talking. Okay, keep going. Yes.
Personally, I knew, I didn't freak out because I knew that, like, I mean, don't try this at home, but like when you put a baby into water, the initial reaction is for them to hold their breath. So, you know, like we were torturing her. She was fine. She was, what she was most afraid of was, keep in mind, she had never seen Western people in the orphanage, and she had certainly never seen Western men with long beards. So that was like, you know, but otherwise she was fine. She was totally fine.
Right. So you said this was in August. So this was basically when she was 13 months.
No, right. Her birthday. Yeah. So she was 13 months. Yeah. Yeah. And I will tell you that all the rabbis I dealt with were wonderful. And then when we moved from one synagogue to another, immediately welcoming and wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah. But then again, there was like the playgroup story. And also, I think, you know, I had to teach Rachel the difference between taunting and
say that again, because you broke up for a second. Taunting and
asking questions.
Okay.
So especially with little kids are very blunt and direct.
Yep.
Are you Chinese? Or you're Chinese, you know?
Right.
So
two very different things.
Right. So I had to explain to her that other kids would be curious, but then other times it was bullying. Or another time there is a playground jump roping chant that is very racist about Japanese.
Okay.
Very.
I'm trying to think of what it is, but it's not important what it is. Okay.
Right. And she came home and told me what they were saying and how they were, like, you know, pulling up their eyes for Chinese, pulling down their eyes for Japanese. It was horrible. Horrible. I sent an email I sent a message in the parents' group chat.
Yep.
This was so devastating.
And what did they say? And how old was she? Someone is asking.
It was, I think, before first grade.
Okay.
They explained it, their daughters, and it stopped.
Amazing.
And I also went to the teacher. You know, so the sad thing is that children are products of their environment. One girl said something to her once because, you know, she would go to the dry cleaner with her mother, and there would be a Chinese lady behind the counter, and the mother would say something about that lady. So she came to school and said something to Rachel. The teacher heard it and put a stop to it. I've always said to Rachel, people just don't know. People will literally stop and stare at her on the street. It's an unusual thing. The kids haven't been exposed to a broad range of people.
Right.
And I've had to explain for the years, and Rachel gets it, that it's not so much, it's not bullying, it's not taunting, it's questioning, it's wondering about the unknown. Another thing that we had, you know, we haven't talked about me being single, but I remember being at a friend's house for a holiday meal, and the kids were out front with Rachel, and they said to her, well, where's your father? And she said, I don't have a father. And they kept saying, you have to have a father. You have to have a father. Now, I knew what was going on.
Right.
If you take children, you don't have to have a father. They're going to worry about their own father. That was very threatening to them, that concept that they might not have a father.
Right.
Kids have a lot of questions.
Very much, very much. And so let's go into that a little bit more. How was it as a, as a single mother raising a child from another country, from another race? And how did you manage those pieces? And how did you, like, how did you answer those questions? How did you guide Rachel to answer those questions?
So the line that we use is families come in different shapes and different forms. We were a park in China. There's a fabulous park in Chinatown, really fabulous. So we went one time and I brought a pack of water balloons. And I said to Rachel, take this pack of water balloons and go over and share them with the kids at the fountain. That's
how old was she approximately?
I'd say kindergarten age.
Right. Okay.
And, you give kids water balloons and they're happy and they're your best friend.
Yep.
But someone asked, are you her mother? Are you her mother? I get that a lot. Are you her mother? Or like, I mean, this is kind of, funny, but we'll be at a store and I'll be like at the cash register putting stuff on the conveyor belt and she'll come over and put something on and someone will say, oh, you have to wait. And I'll say, no, she's with me. Or I'll say, she's my daughter. Like,
right.
So in terms of being a single mother, after that incident with the play group, I was then working on getting her into a school. And I asked the head of a school, I said, do you think it's going to be a problem, me being a single mother and all? And he said, there are advantages to it. There's not going to be fighting in your house.
Wow. I'm like, I'm kind of, I did not expect that answer. And now I'm feeling kind of depressed about that.
Right. He said that he saw so many dysfunctional, intact families that she might be, I'm not condemning marriage. I'm not saying that.
Of course.
And I always say, I have to make all the decisions. On the other hand, I get to make all the decisions.
Right. Right.
So, when Rachel was, 2 or 3, terrible twos, the tantrums, and she had night terrors, which is not uncommon amongst adopted children. Like it would go on, the screaming, the tantrums, or the night terrors, on. And they say like you're supposed to change the climate or the lighting to like knock them out of the night terror. So I remember I took her to the door of my balcony and she wouldn't stop screaming. I went on the balcony. She wouldn't stop screaming. People were staring up from the street. And I thought to myself, I wish I was married so I could leave. You're laughing. So I said this to a bunch of my women friends the other day, and the day after, and they started laughing. They're like, are you kidding? You wouldn't be able to leave. Right. So I know there are husbands who are all in and are incredibly helpful. It's not every husband.
Right. That's correct.
This is when she was like 2 or 3, and there have been times since, and I asked myself, like, can't I leave now? The answer,
right.
I wouldn't necessarily, I would probably be doing that on my own anyway.
Yep.
Or there's no walking away.
Yeah. So. By the way, I mean, you have to know this, and I'm saying it because it's being echoed over and over and over again in these comments. I mean, you are incredible. But I'm saying it myself, but the fact that you have done all of this and have brought your daughter up to be, Rachel is 17?
18.
18.
I adopted her on her first birthday. We've been together for 17 years. She's now 18. Thank God she's in college and she's working full time in a special needs health clinic.
I mean, it is just unbelievable. It's
no different than any parent goes through. And I really wanted to do a second adoption. It didn't end up. I remember speaking to a friend of mine who at that point had 7 or 8 kids. And I said, isn't it scary? Because you don't know what's going to happen with the next child. And like, I could go back and adopt another, and I don't know if it's going to be this good. And she said, you never know. You have to have faith.
Right. You also never know, even if you have a biological child.
That's what
you never know.
She had 7 or 8 kids and went on to have more. And thank God everything is fine, but every child has his or her own challenges.
Absolutely.
Every child.
Absolutely. Okay, one last question that we keep getting. What is your thought about how to integrate a child's, country of origin, nationality of origin, country and nationality, probably the same thing now that I'm saying it, culture of origin into your own life? How much, is coming from you? How much is coming from Rachel? Have you ever gone back to China? What does she want? Like, these are the kinds of questions that we're getting asked.
So this is something I learned from Jane Aronson in that parenting class. She taught us that you have to incorporate your child's culture or background into your life so that the child doesn't feel that you're ashamed of it. So I do have a Chinese motif in some of the furniture in my house. We try to celebrate Chinese holidays, not in a religious way, but just in a cultural way. I taught her how to use chopsticks. We eat Chinese food. We love Chinese food, though we also love Mexican food or whatever. Right. But like specifically, we go after Chinese food, and we cook and have it in our homes. It's so interesting because the Chinese calendar is a lunar calendar, just like the Jewish calendar.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes, and listen to this. This is so interesting. Chinese New Year's it's always in the Jewish month of Adar and around Purim. And
wow.
A lot of the symbolism is the same.
I was going to say, I often like, now that I'm thinking about it, I often see like lots of costumes and lots of like I'm wondering, yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Keep going.
That children get gifts of money in these little red envelopes. My mom would find the place to buy the red envelopes in Los Angeles, and she sends Rachel gifts of money on Chinese New Year in red envelopes.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes. Yes. And for years on Purim, every little girl on Purim wants to be a bride or a queen or a princess or whatever. So one year Rachel went as a Chinese princess, which is kind of funny because you see all these non-Chinese kids in the Jewish community going as Chinese princess on Purim. And here was Rachel in costume. And yeah.
Right. Amazing. Amazing. And what does Rachel feel about, like, have you or any of you ever gone back to China? No. Like, what, in terms of open adoption, closed adoption, knowing about where she comes from, how does that work with these agencies?
Very tricky because closed adoption in China because the parents don't stay connected. Just the circumstances of how the babies end up in an orphanage in China. There is no family history and no family connection. All I can say is that Rachel's parents must have been very special people and also very good looking because Rachel is beautiful.
She is beautiful.
And I feel very bad for them that they don't have Rachel in their lives. I feel very bad for that mother having to make that decision. I cannot imagine. When I had to go back to work after a very short maternity leave, I felt like someone had pulled my ribs out of my side. I felt the whole thing, do you have a connection to your adopted child? It was as if I had given birth to her and was now leaving her when I went back to work. It was physically painful. So the parents going through that. There are a lot of reasons why parents in China give up their babies. I just assumed that they wanted a better life for her than they could give. And it's just very sad that this was going on so much in China. And of course, policies in China have changed.
Right.
So.
Right. And so to close, what is your advice? What are your thoughts to anyone who's considering this as a single individual or as a family considering adoption from another race, another country? Like, what's your advice to them?
Understand that times have changed and they've changed a lot. There's still more change that has to happen. But you can make it happen for your child. And it's like, I named Rachel after my two grandmothers. She's named after my mother's mother and my father's mother. And she is incredibly connected to the family. you can make that connection to family, to community. It's a lot of work, but anything involving children is a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, I was warned that it was going to be a lot of work. Again, you know, my sister-in-law in California is a parenting coach, and she specializes in twins and multiples, and I think that parenting classes are very smart, no matter what your situation is. It's not an easy process, parenting. And I don't think it's an easy process for anyone. So, right. Rachel's named after, I was saying that Rachel's named after my two grandmothers, but there's a Hebrew word for gift, matana. And I tell her that, I tell her this all the time and she cringes, but I say that I was tempted to name her Matana because she is my gift from God. So.
Yeah, this is, you know, Yeti Katz, who I spoke to the other night, she spoke about this concept also, that she feels that her children are her gift. That was the gift that God gave her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All of our gifts, but yes, I'm incredibly blessed.
You are. And we're also grateful that you were willing to share this, because it gives so much information and really so many different vantage points about this process that people really need, because people are scared. I think, you know, people are scared that adoption is just, it's too onerous. It's too, you know, too long. It's not maybe not worth it in the end. And then also I hear a lot like, but if a person doesn't look like me and then I have to share, or if they're from another race or religion or wherever, then how do we integrate? Like, there are a lot of questions that people have, and to be able to show them that this is possible and there is a beautiful life that can be had is just, I mean, that's what we're trying to do, to have people know that adoption is a very real and beautiful possibility as a way to build your family.
And I would just say, if you want to learn more about Jane Aronson and learn more about the process, she has an excellent website. It's called orphan.com.
Say it again, just because I want to write it down.
Orphan, ORPHAN, doctor.com. A lot of resources on her website.
Okay, I'm gonna link that for everybody after we finish.
And then the Jewish Child Care Association of New York, which is jccany.org. Okay.
Child Care Association. Okay, perfect. I will link that for people to take a look at.
Amy, thank you so much for talk about this again. It is an amazing, amazing thing. I mean, they handed me a baby.
And thank God they did. And thank God. Thank you so much. Anybody, if you want to reach out to Cindy, you know, this is her handle. You definitely can do so. And I will link these two resources afterwards so people can get more information there too.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.